Labour absolutely caved in to the eco mob? It's time for the head-to-head. All right, so rumours swirling tonight that the government's anti-extremism czar, Lord Wolney, could be facing the axe, just months after he warned that far-left groups are wreaking havoc on Britain. Lord Wolney has been an outspoken critic of groups like Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action, claiming in a report earlier this year that they should be treated like terrorist organisations and that it should be an offence to belong to such a protest group. Well, surprise, surprise, the government is now reportedly reviewing his role. It comes after the anti-Brexit, anti-Tory pressure group led by donkeys last night called for Labour to release so-called climate activists from jail.
Among those currently held in UK jails are 5 Just Stop Oil activists serving sentences between 4 and 5 years. Meanwhile, 2 other protesters who threw soup on the glass of Van Gogh sunflowers have just been sentenced to 20 months and 2 years in prison. Well, now there's a new parliament and a new government led by a man who used to understand the role protest plays in making the UK a better place to live. It's time for Labour to remember its roots and reinstate the right to peaceful protest.
Indeed, Labour's biggest corporate donor in the run-up to the election was none other than climate change campaigner and former Just Stop Oil donor Dale Vince. So as rumours swirl that the government's anti-extremism czar, Lord Wolney, is facing the chop, tonight I'm asking, has Labour caved in to the eco mob? Make sure you go to gbnews.com/your say, tweet me at gbnews, and when you're there, have a little vote in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now are the head of policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Harry Wilkinson, and Just Stop Oil spokesperson Dr. Bing Jones. Chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Harry, I'll start with you. I mean, does this look a little bit like they are trying to appease the eco mob by shifting Lord Wolney to one side?
Well, there's been a lot of confusion about this story. We heard yesterday this report from the Byline Times that he was out of a job. Then we heard from the government he was still in post. And so now there's a lot of confusion around this particular story. I think we should go back to what the key problems were here. We saw Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, these extreme green groups who were actually really threatening public safety. We've seen ambulances blocked from going down the road. We've seen persistent illegal behaviour. We've seen Extinction Rebellion activists jailed for a plot that would have actually brought the southeast of England to deadlock by freezing traffic on the M25. These are really dangerous actions that could cost lives and ruin you know, many livelihoods and do real damage to the economy. So there was a need for him to address this and address how the police responds to this because they haven't necessarily been acting in the most robust way. When we see these devastating protests, we see protesters who are committing offences again and again and again and not seeing justice faced.
Fine. Dr. Bing Jones, Just Stop Oil spokesperson, I will bring you in here. Presumably Just Stop Oil would welcome the removal of Lord Wolney. He thinks that you're basically extremists should be treated as extremist groups.
Yeah, Lord Wolney is not independent. He's paid, he's part of a group that's paid for by fossil fuels and arms interests. Appointing him is a kind of a corruption of the democratic process. It's basically allowing the fossil fuel industry to have a voice in silencing people who are trying to warn us all of the most awful.
Sorry, didn't Dale Vince donate to Labour? Is that not what you're doing?
Pardon?
Well, Dale Vince gave the Labour Party a load of money when he was a big backer of Just Stop Oil. Is that not quite a similar thing? Money, vested interests, influence?
No, Dale Vince doesn't have an official post whereby he advises the government.
Right.
And look, we're looking at the collapse of the climate. Patrick, are you not looking at your television screen? We're looking at scientists screaming, and we're looking at hurricanes in America, which are the worst ever hurricanes that have ever hit that part of the country. We're looking at hundreds of people dying. We're looking at billions of pounds worth of damage. We're looking at human misery on a massive scale. And all you want to do is to quibble about whether or not this is a right or left.
The thing I'm quibbling over is something I think actually cuts right to the very core of our democracy, Harry, which is whether or not a pressure group, an environmental pressure group like Just Stop Oil, which has, by many people's metric, employed relatively extreme action over the course of the years, been able to have some influence over the current government that we've got. Do you think they do, Harry?
Well, if this decision has in fact been made, then it would suggest, unfortunately, they do, that they're ignoring the risks that some of these groups pose. And we've heard much extremism from these kind of groups. It's sad to hear these doom and gloom warnings repeated. The reality is that fewer people are dying in extreme weather, and children, are being poisoned by this catastrophic narrative. They're being they're leaving school to go on protests, and adults who should know better are facilitating children leaving schools. So,
Harry,
these groups.
That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. The misery caused by the climate warming, the heating of the climate, is absolutely dire. There are millions of people who are being displaced from their homes. They can't grow the food that their grandfathers.
Why do you keep throwing soup over a Van Gogh then? What's the point of that?
Because the essence of the problem is that people have the government and you guys in the media are not conveying the urgency of this problem. It is getting worse by the minute. And the Van Gogh stunt, you might call it, got millions and millions of hits. We are managed to be able to raise this issue. Patrick, this is absolutely dire. I've told you before, I'm a doctor. I've watched people dying necessarily because they did not know how bad their problem was. This is the world's situation now.
Sorry, just clarify that for me. Is that all right? Sorry. What do you mean? So sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean. As a doctor, you watch people dying, what, because of climate crisis in this country? Sorry, did I misunderstand that?
Sorry. I watched people with cancers who did not realise how bad their cancers were until it was too late, and they died unnecessarily. And that is the situation that we're in at the moment. And people like Harry, who are paid to advocate for the fossil fuel industry, which is causing the collapse of our climate, this is absolutely terrible, because people do not realise the cause of the hurricanes and the droughts,
it's complete nonsense.
And we need to do that.
It's complete nonsense, if I may interject there, to say I'm being paid by fossil fuels. That's not the case. I am concerned about climate change, and I want to see sensible policies to respond to that threat. What would happen if we follow the green extremists' policies is that the global economy would collapse, millions of people would die, because the anti-growth agenda is so dangerous.
The global economy is going to collapse. It's collapsing right now.
Okay,
the
well, it's not, is it, Bernie? All right. Okay. All right, guys. I'm afraid we are out of time, and but just not quite in the same way that Dr. Bing Jones thinks we are. We're going to go to your poll now, but thank you very much to the head of policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Harry Wilkinson, and Just Stop Oil spokesperson Dr. Bing Jones. Until next time. So, who do you agree with? Has Labour caved into the eco mob? Albert on X says typical Labour, more concerned with appeasing noisy protesters than standing up to the silent majority. Another example of their inability to make tough decisions. Sarah says caved. They are the eco mob. All right. OK, well, your verdict is now in. 97% of you think that Labour has indeed caved to the eco-mob. 3% of you say Labour has not. It will be interesting to see whether or not Lord Walney is still in post this time tomorrow, won't it? But coming up, thanks to your generous donations, my fundraising